Blender tips, Blender secrets, Blender hacks. Whatever you call them, there are 50 quick Blender tutorials packed into this one video. My name is Brandon, and I have saved a few of the best ones for the very end. So let's get started. Voxel art, those blocky Minecraft Lego looking renders, are pretty popular. In Blender, you can give any object this look. Select the object and add a remesh modifier. There's an option at the top for blocks. Check that, and voila, you've got voxel art. Change the depth and the scale to affect the size and density of the voxels. You can even animate this. And when you apply the modifier, it actually changes the mesh into blocks. If you want to randomize the animation of anything, for example, the movement along the z-axis of this object, give it one keyframe for the thing you want to animate. Go to the graph editor, and let's select the channel for Z location. Press N to open up a sidebar in the graph editor. Go to Modifiers, Add Modifier, Noise. It gives us a noisy, random animation along the Z-axis. Increasing the scale will tone down the craziness of the animation. Changing the strength will adjust how far it goes in both directions. This works on anything that can be animated. Here I just used it to flicker the strength of this light. A quick way to give a different look to your renders is to go down to the bottom of the Render Properties tab. Under Color Management, find Look. There are different levels of contrast, and usually adding a little to a scene makes it look a lot better. The good part is you can render your image once, and then change these to test out the looks without rendering again. You can create an instanced copy of an entire collection. Put objects into a collection by pressing M and New Collection. Give the collection a name. Now Shift-A to add a new object. Choose Collection Instance, then choose your collection. It creates a non-editable copy of the collection. This uses a lot less data in your scene, and any changes you make with the original collection, either by moving the objects or editing them, will be updated instantly in all collection instances. There are probably actions you use in Blender over and over again, like Subdivide. Well, you can add them to your quick favorites. Here's how. Next time you use the action, right-click on it and select Add to Quick Favorites. Now whenever you're working, you can press Q on your keyboard, and your quick favorites will be right next to your cursor. The favorites are specific to edit mode and object mode, so each will have its own favorites menu. The Quick Favorites feature works in the shading editor too. Press Shift-A and find a shader that you use often. Right-click it and choose Add to Quick Favorites. Now whenever you're in the shader editor, just press Q and select the shader you want from your favorites list. The line art modifier is a way to add 2D line art over a 3D scene. Shift-A to add an object. Choose Grease Pencil, Stroke. Move the stroke out of view, and with the stroke selected, go to Add Modifier and choose Line Art. In the modifier settings, choose Source Type, Scene. For Layer, choose Colors. For Material, choose the color you want the line art to be. Just like that, you have line art over your scene. It's important to know that line art displays from the view of your camera, so have your camera set up where you want it before you do this. There are a lot more settings and options for the line art, so I have an entire video dedicated to this if you want to check it out. I assume most people know about the array modifier and how it can make copies of an object and then display them in an array. But I think an underused piece of this modifier is object offset. You select it and then select another object to use as reference, usually an empty. Then the array will copy the offset of the object. What this means is every iteration of the array will be scaled, moved, and rotated however the referenced object is. Let me show you. If I move the referenced object, each iteration of the array moves by that much in that direction. If I rotate it, each iteration is given a compounding rotation. And if I scale it, each step in the array can get bigger or smaller as it goes. And a really cool part is I can animate this by animating the changes to the empty object. Play around with this and I bet you will find something cool you can use it for. Or just use it to make a spiral staircase. When you create an array like this fence here, you can run into a problem at the end. There's no last fence post. Select the vertical post portion of the fence, duplicate it, and make it its own object with P. Now in the array modifier, expand the tab for caps. Choose InCap and select the fence post object. It'll add whatever object you have selected to cap off the end of the array. You can randomly move, scale, or rotate multiple objects in Blender. Select all the objects, then go to Object, Transform, Randomize Transform. A box opens in the bottom of the viewport. You can individually randomize their movement along each axis. You can randomize rotation on each axis, and the same for scale. If you check Scale Even, then it'll scale all 3 axes evenly. And you can choose different randomizations by changing the seed value. The Wave modifier adds procedural waves to an object effortlessly. It needs a lot of geometry to work with. On a plane, we can subdivide it a whole bunch of times and go to Add Modifier Wave. Play your animation to see the wave. There are lots of options for the wave. The fall off is how far the waves will travel before they fall off. Height is how high the waves are going to be. Width is how far apart they're going to be. And narrowness is the narrowness of the top part of the wave, if that makes sense. Start position allows you to adjust where the wave originates, or have it originate based on the location of another object. Time settings adjust the start time, stop time, and speed of the waves. And lastly, you can add a texture to your wave for more detail. I found this takes a lot of geometry and slows down the animation though, but it can make your wave look really cool. It doesn't just work on planes, you can add it to just about anything, even text. See what I did there? If you have made it this far, consider giving the video a like and subscribing for more Blender stuff. If you want to have hanging wires or cables in Blender, there's an easy and free way to do it using curves. Go to Preferences and turn on the add-on called Add Curve Extra Objects. In object mode, select the 2 objects you want to create a hanging curve between. You can only do it between 2 objects at a time. Press Shift-A to add an object. Choose Curve and down at the bottom find Knots. Then choose Catenary. A drooping curve will be created between the origin points of the 2 objects. In the Options panel that opens at the bottom left of the screen, you have options. Steps are how many vertices the curve will have. The A value is what's really cool. It will adjust how much slack is in the curve and how far down it hangs. You can change the bevel radius to give it some thickness. There are a few other settings to play around with here too. Add some empties to your scene and go crazy with hanging cables. You can draw curves on the surface of objects with the Draw tool. Create a curve, tab into Edit mode, delete all the vertices, and turn on the Draw tool. In the sidebar under Tool, you have a lot of settings. Change the depth from cursor to surface. Give the curve some bevel in the curve settings. Now, draw away. Pretty cool, but if you really want to have fun with curves, check out the Cable Raider add-on. It's on Blender Market with a link in the description. It's my favorite add-on for curves. Checker Deselect is handy. Let's say you want to select every other face on this plane. Select them all and then go to Select, Checker Deselect. This little options box pops up in the bottom. You can tell it how many faces to leave unselected between selected faces and how many faces to select in a row. Then you can offset it if it's not where you want it. It's really easy to picture this on a flat plane, but it works well on other shapes too. I used to spend a lot of time individually selecting faces on cylinders to extrude. Well, Checker Deselect solved this problem. Select Random is like Checker Deselect's cousin. It works in either object mode or edit mode. In edit mode, go to Select, Select Random. It randomly selects either vertices, edges, or faces depending on which selection mode you're in. In the options box, you can change the ratio, which defaults at 50%. And you can quickly pick different randomizations by adjusting the seed value. In object mode, it will randomly select among all visible objects. So hide what you don't want to be part of the selection. The controls on the bottom work the same way. Blender packs a lot of things into one screen and it makes the icons and UI really small. If you want to make the interface larger, go to Edit, Preferences, and under Interface, you can increase the resolution scale. 1 is normal, but you can make it as big as you want or smaller for that matter. In Blender, Import Images as Planes is a very useful add-on, but did you know you can also import videos as planes? This may be even more useful. Make sure the Import Images as Planes add-on is turned on. Press Shift A, Image, Image as Plane. Navigate to the video you want to import and bring it in just like you would an image. Now, in the shader editor, there are options to control what frame you start the video on, and you can check cyclic to make the video repeat. This can be an easy way to add steam or other elements to your scene. By the way, I got this steam element and a whole bunch more from Ian Hubert's Patreon page. Ian Hubert is awesome. You may want to lock an object's transform so they don't change location, rotation, and scale. In the sidebar, also known as the In menu, you can lock each individual axis. But the real tip here is you can select one and then drag all the way down across the ones you want. 9 clicks turns into 1, and the same thing works to unlock them. Pretty cool. You can connect an external image editor like Photoshop to Blender. Go to your preferences, under File Path and Applications, go to Image Editor. Navigate to the exe file of the image editing software of your choice. For me, I found Photoshop.exe, where it's saved on my computer. Now when you're in your image editor and you have a texture or image loaded, you can go to Image, Edit Externally. Now this will only work if the image is actually already saved outside of Blender. Your image editing software will open, change whatever you want, and save the file. When you go back into Blender, to update the image, go to Image, Reload. You can tell a camera to remain focused on an object using a Track To constraint. Select the camera. From the Constraint panel, add Object Constraint. Choose Track To under Tracking. In the target box, choose the object you want it to focus on. Now if we animate the camera to move across the scene, it remains pointed at the Suzanne. The influence is how much this constraint pulls the camera toward the target. You could fade this effect in or out by animating the influence. Interestingly, you could use this in reverse and add a Track To constraint to an object but list the camera as the target. Might have to tweak some of the axis settings, but now, wherever you move the camera, the object will turn to face the camera. These monkeys keep staring at me. A really quick way to aim lights in Blender is to select the light and press Shift T. Then just point your cursor to aim the light. It works with sun lamps, spot lamps, and area lights. Normally when you have an object with a material on it and you try to extrude your mesh, the new mesh's textures are all messed up. But in edit mode, you can go to the options in the top right corner and check on the box Correct Face Attributes. Now when you extrude your textures on the new geometry, look right. It doesn't always work though. When extruding out perpendicularly, the textures are still screwed up. In that case, you can manually edit the textures in the UV editor or just UV unwrap everything again. Navigation in Blender can be weird. You can get lost in 3D space. One thing I've found helpful is locking the view to my 3D cursor. It's in the sidebar or the In menu under View. Check Lock to 3D Cursor. Now your viewport pivot point and where you zoom in and out of will always be your 3D cursor, which you can move around as desired. Maybe it's not for everyone, but I really like it. If you're tired of changing the same settings over and over again for every project, do this. Open a new file. Change what you want to be your default settings. I'll change the render engine to cycles with GPU compute. My resolution, render samples, and I'll lock the view to 3D cursor. Now go to File, Defaults, Save Startup File. Next time you open a new Blender file, these settings are already the defaults. All right, we're halfway there. This one's not just for Blender, but it's really for anyone who stares at a computer screen for a long time. Blue light from screens makes it more difficult to fall asleep. I started using blue light glasses an hour or two before I go to bed, and I sleep way better. There are fancy and expensive ones, but I'll link to cheap ones that I use in the description. Better rest equals better art. If you are looking to model with precision or match real-world scale, Blender can easily display various measurements for you. Go to the Overlays drop-down box and you'll find a section for measurements. Edge length is probably the most useful, but you can also turn on angles and area. The measurements show for whatever you have selected in edit mode. In Blender, shape keys are a way to deform a mesh from one position to another, and then animate the deformation. They can be used for a lot of things, including facial animations. To use them, select an object. In the Data Properties panel, there is an area for shape keys. Press the plus icon to add your first shape key, which defaults to the name Base. This will remain the base or starting shape for the object. Then add another one and it's called Key 1. With Key 1 selected, you can enter edit mode and move your vertices around to create your new shape. Don't add any new geometry though. Then in object mode, you use the value slider to change between one shape and the other. You can add multiple shape keys to an object, and you can blend more than one of them together. You can animate the slider value by hovering over it and pressing I to add a keyframe. It works well in sculpt mode too, but in sculpt mode, you need to have the keys selected and you have to have the slider value all the way to 1 or it won't work. Whichever shape key you have selected is the one you'll be editing when you make changes, so make sure you pay attention to which one's selected. I have a longer video that goes into more detail on shape keys, link in the description. Adding custom bevel profiles in Blender is easy. When you add a bevel in edit mode by pressing Ctrl B, open up the options panel that displays below. Increase the number of segments so you have more to work with. The shape slider tweaks the shape of the default bevel. But down at the bottom, you can change the profile type from super ellipse to custom. Then you can click on this line and add points and drag them around to customize the profile of your bevel. And you can change the handle types to change how pointy parts of the profile are. And under presets, you have a handful of options like stairs and crown molding, all of which you can continue to customize to your heart's content. Here's a quick one. Naming objects in Blender is super important. A fast way to do it is to just select the object and press F2. A box opens up where you type the object's new name and press enter. Way easier than trying to find it over in the collections. The decimate modifier is used to reduce the amount of geometry on an object with only minimal impact to its shape. Sometimes you buy or download a model with just way too much geometry and it slows down your computer. Photoscan models are the worst. So you can add a decimate modifier. The ratio is what percentage of the geometry you want to remain. Even cutting it in half can make a big performance difference without affecting most models. Unlike other modifiers, the decimate modifier won't allow you to visualize this in edit mode. But you can see in object mode if it's going to distort the shape. Turn the ratio up if it is. Then apply the modifier and the mesh is reduced or decimated as it's instructed. The skin modifier is interesting. Start with a very basic object like a plane and add a skin modifier. It adds a weird skin around the lines of the mesh. You can select vertices and extrude them out into shapes. Then you can select a vertex and press Ctrl A to expand or contract the width of the skin at each vertex. From the modifier panel, you can smooth it out around the branches and give it smooth shading. Then you can even add an armature to it for rigging with a simple click. What users do is use this to create the basic outline of a model and then sculpt it. Once you apply the modifier, you can have a basis to start sculpting. Lots of uses for this if you get creative. Blender's gotten a lot faster at rendering, but a lengthy animation in cycles can still take a long time. One option is to use render farms. There are many out there and each work a little differently. But basically, render farms are services that allow you to upload a Blender file and use their servers to render your animations much faster. The first time I tried one, I used Garage Farm, and I made an entire video about the process from a newbie's perspective. Check it out if you're interested. I wish I found this one out years ago. In cycles, you can use negative values for lights to remove light from an area in your scene. You can't slide light power values below 0, but you can type in a negative number. Instead of projecting light, it'll remove light. If you give the light a color, it'll remove that color from the spectrum. It works on point, spot, area, and even sun lamps. It does not work in Eevee though, unfortunately. In cycles, you can add textures to your lighting. It works well with point and spot lamps. Select a lamp and go to the shader editor. Click the box that says Use Nodes. Increase either the emission strength or the power under light settings. If you have Node Wrangler activated, select the emission shader and press Ctrl T. This adds an image texture and mapping setup. Change the texture coordinate from UV to normal. You can select an image to use in the image texture node. You can also choose a video, which is pretty cool. Changing the radius of the lamp will change how blurry the light is. All the other light settings work as normal. Instead of an image texture, you could also use any other texture setup like waves, Musgrave, Voronoi, whatever that word is. Mix and match them all you want, just like you would with other materials. When you're texture painting in Blender, you can create color palettes to use. Under Brush Settings, open Color Picker and Color Palette. Press plus to create a new palette. Use the color picker to choose colors you want in the palette and hit the plus icon to add that color to your palette. You can quickly choose between these colors. Or open an image that you want to use colors from inside of your image editor. Go to Image Extract Palette. Now in your palette tools, click the browser icon and a palette has been created with the name of the image. Select it and every color from that image has been put into a palette for you. Blender 3.0 introduced Cycles X, which is a much improved version of the Cycles render engine, and it changed how sampling works. You used to just choose how many samples to use, but now you actually have a few different ways of doing it. First, and this is turned on by default, you can choose a noise threshold. This tells Blender to keep sampling until it gets the noise down to a certain point. Lower values have less noise but render for longer. But you can also tell it to stop if it gets to a maximum number of samples. And you can give it a minimum number of samples. Below this, you can even tell Blender to stop sampling after a certain number of seconds. If you uncheck noise threshold, you can give it a set number of samples like in previous versions of Blender, but can also give it a time limit. Leaving the time limit at 0 means there is no time limit. Denoising in Cycles X works great, but a little tip is to make sure that your GPU drivers are updated. The fast and powerful upgrades of Cycles X only work with the newer drivers for GPUs. The Blender Asset Browser was introduced in Blender 3.0. It still needs some improvement, but allows you to quickly drag and drop objects and materials into your scene. It's supposed to eventually support much more. It's a little tricky to set up though, so I have a step-by-step tutorial video on it. Dynamic Sky is an add-on that comes shipped with Blender. To use it, turn it on under the add-ons in the preferences. Under Create on the sidebar, open Dynamic Sky. Hit Create. Then go to your world settings. Next to the world, there will be a drop-down box with an option called Dynamic 1. Select that, and now you have a custom world. You can change the sky color, the horizon color, cloud opacity, and cloud density. You can also control the sun color and strength. It creates a pretty complicated node tree for you, but gives you all the controls right here. Real Snow is another add-on that comes already installed with Blender. Turn it on in the preferences, and it can add a fairly realistic snow effect to objects pretty fast. Select an object or multiple objects you want to add snow to. The control will show up in your sidebar menu, and only has a few options. The coverage is what percentage of the top of the object you want covered in snow. The height is how tall you want the snow. Or you can go into edit mode and individually select the faces you want to have snow on. Then check selected faces, and it'll only add snow to those faces. It even adds a fairly realistic snow material to the snow. The snow is added as a new object, but it's parented to the object underneath. So if you move it, the snow moves with it. The add-on's called Real Snow, and if you have Blender, you already have it. When you select multiple faces and inset them using the shortcut I, by default, they inset as one face. While you're insetting them, you can press I again to toggle back and forth between treating them as one face or as individuals. Then you click to set the action in place like normal. The next time you inset, Blender will default to whichever way you left it. Polygon is the Blender Guru site where you can buy high-quality materials and models. But if you just create an account, they have a lot of free stuff too. One of the coolest things might be the Polygon Material Converter. It's a free plugin you can install that adds this material converter to your materials panel. Pick a folder where you keep your materials, then pick a material, and choose Load and Apply. It puts the material right onto your object, but wait, there is more. Open the shader editor, and you see all your materials are connected neatly using just a couple node groups. All the controls you'd want to adjust are right here. Scaling of the texture, roughness, normal strength, and color adjustments. This is the default simple UV mapping node for Polygon. But with the add-on installed, you can also swap this out for the mosaic node, which is really cool. When you have tiled textures, at some point you can start to see the tile pattern. This mosaic node breaks up that tile pattern. The material converter works with non-polygon materials as long as they follow the same naming conventions. I like Polygon, I use it all the time, and I've got an affiliate link for it below. Create a free account and go check it out. The floor constraint allows you to let one object act as a floor for another object. I'll add a plane and a cube. Go to the Constraints panel. With the cube selected, add Object Constraint. Under Relationship, choose Floor. In the target box, select the object you want to use as a floor. In this case, it's the plane. Now, if we lower the cube, its origin point will not go below the plane. If we want it to be more like a true floor, we have to put the origin point at the bottom of the cube. If you don't know, you can do that by placing your 3D cursor on the bottom of the cube, then choose Object, Set Origin, Origin to 3D Cursor. Now the cube will not go below the plane at all. There are a few controls on the restraint to play around with. A cool one is Use Rotation. With this selected, you can rotate the plane and use it to kind of push your cube around. It's got to be useful for something. One way to move around your scene in Blender is the walk or fly mode. To use it, press Shift tilde. The tilde is the squiggly line usually at the top left of a keyboard. Now you're in walk mode. You use W, A, S, and D to move forward, backward, and side to side. Move your cursor around to look in different directions, just like in video games. E will take you straight up, Q will bring you straight down. Clicking anywhere will take you out of walk mode. If you do this while in camera view, it'll move your camera along as you move. It's a great way to make small adjustments to your camera angle. If you go to Preferences under Navigation, you can change from walk to fly mode. Fly mode works a little differently, and when you move in any direction, it keeps moving until you stop or change directions. I like walk mode. A way to add interesting lights to a scene in Blender is with IES lighting. IES lights are files that tell a lamp how to distribute light. Unfortunately, they only work in cycles right now. You can find thousands of free IES files at ieslibrary.com. Find a light you want to use and click Download IES. In Blender, add a point lamp. Go to the light properties and select Use Nodes. Go to the shader editor and add an IES texture node. Select External on the node and navigate to the IES file you downloaded. Plug the factor of the IES texture into the strength of the emission shader. You'll probably have to tweak the strength setting a little, and you can change the color output of the light. These are way more interesting than default lights in Blender. Maybe you want to keep notes in a Blender project either for yourself or for someone else that you plan to share it with. Blender has a text editor you can open in one of your workspaces. Find the text editor under Scripting. Press New to create a new data block. Now you can type notes or whatever else you want. It will default with the coding syntax for scripting. Under View, you can turn off syntax highlight and the number lines if you want. Now it's just plain text. Under Text, be sure to save your text data block. You can name the data block and you can create multiple ones. You can also click the folder icon and import a text file from a program like WordPad. If you do, consider going to Text and choosing Make Internal so it's saved inside of Blender. One last thing, you can even take the text from this editor and turn it into a 3D text object. Go to Edit, Text to 3D Object, and then either one object or one object per line. Mixamo is a free service from Adobe that offers over 120 characters you can use personally or commercially. They also have about 2,500 animations you can give those or other characters. Pick a character, then pick an animation and choose Download. You can choose to export as an FBX file, which you can easily import into Blender. There's also a Mixamo add-on for Blender that does some cool things. If you want to string multiple animations together, you'll use Blender's nonlinear animation or the NLA editor. By the way, I've got an entire video on this process step by step. Check out the link. In Blender, you can import scalable vector graphics or SVG files. Just make sure in your preferences you have turned on the add-on called Import Export Scalable Vector Graphics. On a side note, if you want to convert an image into an SVG file, there are websites that do it for free. I have found Convertio.co works well. When you want to bring in an SVG, go to File, Import, Scalable Vector Graphic. Navigate to and choose your SVG file. Depending on your file, it'll probably bring it in as several different curve objects. If you select them all and join them with Ctrl-J, you have one curve object. Now go to Object, Convert, Mesh. And you have a two-dimensional mesh in the shape of your SVG. You can extrude it out to make a 3D shape. Great for creating 3D logo animations. I really enjoy syncing animation to sound. What helps is to see the wavelength of the audio. You can do this by bringing in an audio clip to the video sequencer and lining it up where you want it. Select the sound clip and go to the menu on the right. Under Source, check the box for Display Waveform. It also helps to go to playback settings in the timeline and turn on audio scrubbing. Go back into your main workspace. Either replace the timeline at the bottom or drag up a new editor window. Change this to Video Sequencer and make sure the option box says Sequencer. You can go to View, Zoom, and zoom in so the waveform is nice and big. Now, use the sequencer as your timeline. With audio scrubbing turned on, you'll be able to hear your audio too. As you animate things in your scene, you can line them up with the audio you're trying to sync it to. Really cool. Say you have a scene with lots of materials, but you want to render the entire scene with just one universal material. I'm sorry, this only works in Cycles, but when you're in Cycles, go to the View Layer Properties panel, and all the way down at the bottom, expand Override. Choose the material from your scene that you want to be your override material. There you go. Lighting is all the same, but every object has this material. To go back to normal, just clear out the override material box. Boid particles are intuitive particle systems that can be given a lot of instructions on how they move around. There's a lot you can do with them, but to get started, add a particle system to an object. Leave it as emitter and change the lifetime of the particles to like 500. Increase the render scale of the particles. Under Physics, change from Newtonian to Boid. Hit play, and that already is pretty cool. But you can go down to the Boid Brain settings. Here you can give the particles different rules on what they're supposed to do. Remove Flock with the minus button and add a new rule with the plus button. Choose Goal. Then under Object, choose another object in the scene. Press play, and the particles will follow the target object. There is so much more to cover here. Look for a full-length video on Boids. I am going to try to put one out pretty soon. And that's it. 50 Blender tips in one video. I will timestamp them eventually in the description. Please leave a comment. Let me know what was helpful, what sucked, and what areas you'd like to see more tips for.